Oh, yes, finally, we have the 2-episode premiere of Cloak and Dagger, the penultimate episode of Legion. News, and more news. Plus, we pick our favorite Marvel origins. Marvel TV Weekly starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
When in the episode of Cloak and Dagger, and they're at the wedding, and I heard To Sir With Love by Lulu, I was like, great! I'm going to get my favorite version of this song from MTV Unplugged, Soul Asylum with Lulu, To Sir With Love, and I present to you Marvel TV Weekly with love, as we do every single Sunday at 10 Pacific. I'm Christian Bladt, joined as always by Amy Cassandra Martinez.
Hi.
And Kari Lane.
What's up?
Exactly. What's up? There's a lot up. So we've got some news that we're going to talk about at the beginning of the show. And we're also going to talk about the 2-episode premiere of Cloak and Dagger. Now, someone at this table has seen the first 4 episodes. So you're going to have to share only half of your thoughts, Amy. You're going to have to put a button on it right after the episode 2. Because I don't want your spoilers trying to rain down on my parade. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about something. It's not really like big news, but sort of like interesting news, some of the things that were talked about. So at the Produced By conference, which I will pretend that I knew existed, Kevin Feige came out and said that the future of Marvel is going to be more women, more diversity, and more sequels. And I think he left out mo money, because more sequels equals more money. But I think that having, obviously that's the biggest knock to this Marvel Cinematic Universe is we haven't had strong female characters. We've had 0 female films, and yes, we're getting Captain Marvel. I did almost call her Ms. Marvel. But speaking of which, there is also Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, in development as well. So I think that this can only be good news, but why should I mansplain to the audience? Why don't I let the ladies weigh in on this? What do you think? More women, more diversity, and more sequels, Amy?
About freaking time.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Also, I mean, we had a little tidbit of that in in Infinity War.
Oh.
And, to see that interaction between all 3 women doing that, yes, it's about time. And I'm just curious to see where else they're going to go. Which ladies? There's so many.
And there have been strong female characters, too. Black Panther definitely had some great female leads. And then looking forward to Ant-Man and Wasp. Mm-hmm. So then it's like a duo. And there's no reason that you can't have a female lead as a character and do well. It's like on the other side of the pond, we have DC, we have Wonder Woman did really well. So it's like, okay, it can work. And there's just so many good material, source material to work with for Marvel. So it's like, come on. And it's great for diversity too of okay, well, we don't want to always see a main white character. It's like there's other characters too.
Mm-hmm. Right. And while we won't get the diversity quotient checked off, although I guess she's Canadian. Ant-Man and the Wasp, we will have at least half of the title. I know we talked about this already, but half of the title is a female character. So it'll be interesting to see that. And I think that it's only smart. Obviously for DC, Wonder Woman is one of their best known, most established characters. The Marvel Cinematic Universe does not have access to some of the best known female Marvel characters who tend to be the X-Men, amongst others. So I think they're definitely approaching it the right way. Having Captain Marvel, we're going to have the Wasp, and there's, I think, a lot of other things in the plan. So that's great. Also, some news that, according to Jeff Loeb, the Netflix series, it's up to Netflix of how long they want to keep them going. So this isn't something because we talked on this show about the idea that, Disney's going to have a streaming service, but they have contract with Netflix, and I think it's up to Netflix at this point to decide, okay, well, we're going to do 4 or 5 seasons or whatever. So I guess I don't know. I think that's good. We're getting season 3 of Daredevil at some point. I have the inside scoop because I know somebody is working on it. I know that season 3 of Luke Cage is they've begun writing it. And we'll definitely getting, we'll talk about in a moment, Iron Fist Season 2 will be this year. And that was something we did not know. So that's some actual news.
Well, Jessica Jones Season 3 is also happening.
Yes, but not this year because we got her. But I guess it's a little unclear if we're getting Daredevil Season 3 this year. And they have yet to plan out the idea of a Punisher Season 2. But in terms of Iron Fist, this was another. It was from the same Reddit, and Anthony, this was the link that of the links from the top of the email that I said, "Oh, grab this," because this has the picture of Danny from the end of Iron Fist Season 1, and there he is in as close an approximation to the Iron Fist costume that we know from the comics. Now he does not. As I've talked many times, he does not have the little yellow elf slippers, but maybe, just maybe, we're going to get them. But I think it's a good point. I think you can be critical of the character, you can be critical of the series in a lot of ways. At no point in Season 1 of Iron Fist, as much as I personally liked it, he wasn't actually in the costume. He either had on like a hoodie or he had no shirt on. And I mean, I guess they're not trying to impress me with the shirt on. But anyway, so I think it'll be cool if we at least see him wear some semblance of this at some point. And I know for a fact, because there have been quotes, that we will see Danny in Season 2 of Luke Cage, which I think we've already talked about. And I don't know, I'm excited about watching them interact. Amy, regardless of your thoughts about Danny on his own show, what do you think about getting to see him hang out with Luke Cage in Season 2 of Luke Cage?
I think the parts where we get to see that in the Defenders were some of the funnier parts of the Defenders. So I welcome it wholeheartedly, and I'm excited.
Sure, Kari, your thoughts are where you stand with Dan? Oh, I think I remember you've said on the show that he was
so
nice. He was nice at a
person.
convention,
I'm like,
right?
I can't hate you.
Yeah. Which is smart, by the way, because if you feel like maybe your show isn't loved, be super nice. And everybody's like, oh, but he's so nice.
There was lots of problems with that show. I felt it was just really hard to get through. He was just so, I don't want to say he was dumb, but like, I'm going to tell you this fantastical thing and you don't believe me, and I'm going to say it to every single person I meet and you still don't believe me? I'm like, dude, you're not a moron. You need to learn to adapt to be like, maybe I shouldn't say this to everybody. Like, there were lots of moments like that just kind of were, ugh. But, yes, in Defenders, I loved his interaction with other characters, so I'd really be curious with him and Luke Cage. And that was kind of the funny thing that was great about Defenders, is it's almost like the writers input our opinions in an audience who didn't love him, because, like, the other characters are making fun of him, which was great. And I think it's smart if a show can make fun of itself. So I'm really excited to see Luke Cage and Danny together. I think that'll be entertaining.
Yeah, and then there's the section of the Defenders. There's a good chunk of an episode where they're just basically both sitting there, and I was like, yeah, this could be all 8 episodes of Defenders, and I would have been fine. So I'm excited to see how they figure out how to get him in there. How are you going to get Danny Rand to go uptown? How's he going to go all the way up to Harlem? So I can't wait till they explain that to us. A couple other light news. The Marvel Studios is not going to rule out crossovers with the TVs and movies, but they say that, but they've kind of ruled it out at every turn so far. And also there was an interesting story that if my computer were behaving better, I'd tell you the source, but it was this idea that the way that the Marvel series are going to handle the ending of Infinity War is just ignore it. So I think that there's a lot you could do, and I think that the problem is that these series have been planned long in advance and the stories that they're going to tell, so I guess it's just easier to ignore it. But I think it could have been interesting to see how they are able to advance that story and just like, oh, how do we, where do we go from there? But I don't know. Are you disappointed at all, Kari, to hear that it won't be really incorporated into any of these shows, or does it just feel like out of necessity they really can't?
I feel like that's what we've been getting anyway, so I'm not really surprised. I mean, crossovers would be great, and even if they're just small, like little cameos or something, it just kind of adds to the world building that they've already established. It's like have somebody like say hello to somebody. They went to coffee, or they joined in a fight and then they got to go somewhere else. I don't know. Yeah,
or you run into somebody on the subway or on the street, and you're like, oh, hey Jessica, what's up? You know, and that's it. That's all we need. I don't know. What do you think, Amy? Do you want to see the shared universe a little bit better on TV from the movies and also from the other series?
Yes. Yes, because there are people that just watch Marvel movies, and I think we can welcome them into the Marvel television universe by doing this. And I mean, why not? We're not asking for much. We just want it all to tie in together, and just for all of these fellow Marvel fans to have fun with it, you know?
Well, let us know what you think about all of this. Some interesting, some exciting things. We are going to move on to talk for a few minutes about the penultimate episode of Legion. Now, Kari and I have already talked about this because I was a guest on the Legion After Show, which you can find on this same channel on AfterBuzz. But there's definitely some interesting things there. I think that the biggest takeaway would be sort of the headspace that Melanie is in at this point. Kari, give us your thoughts about, the Melanie that we see in this episode compared to what we saw the rest of the season so far.
Yes, she has been so frazzled, and I probably should have figured out something was up with her when her hair was all nicely put together. It's like, she did her hair. Wait, no, because before she was really out of it. I was pleasantly surprised the direction they went with that, because you don't really see it coming, per se. You just kind of go, yeah, that's her. She's being weird, but she's been weird before. I think it's been nice to get a lot of these pieces falling into place. The bit with David and Oliver, I still love that scene where he smacks him down with the chair, and comedically we point out he moves him to another chair.
Yeah, he's like, I'm so angry, visual. I'm going to drag you to another chair.
Yeah, but the smashing him down looks so awesome. I was like, yes. And the torture that happens was kind of entertaining, and I'm trying to think I'm like, what did I say?
Yeah, well, the point that I made when we talked about that, which I think is still valid, is that David is arguably the most powerful mutant on Earth, and he decides...
And he doesn't read the guy's mind. That was driving me nuts.
Right, well, he doesn't take the time to read Oliver's mind. Now, the thing about that, though, is that Oliver might have some sort of weird, psychic dampening field or something put in there by Farouk. But David doesn't need to go to town with a drill. I think there's so many... pun intended, tools at his disposal. He doesn't have to use an actual tool. So that was a little distracting, but it just showed how angry he was. But I don't know. But I think that the biggest thing that happens in this episode really is sort of back to Melanie, just sort of sitting down and basically so first of all, it's a refresher because we see a lot of scenes like, look at all these things that David did. But she's also there sort of I don't know if she's the angel on Sid's shoulder or maybe the devil on Sid's shoulder, maybe a little bit of both. And she's like, he's really not a good guy. We should probably be fighting him instead of Farouk. He's not so bad. We're going to need him, according to future Sid. Anyway, and I think that it did, and we talked about this on the Legion After Show, we had to revisit this idea of, is it cheating if you make out with the future version of your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever?
Your partner.
Yeah, whomever your partner is. And I feel like it still has to be yes, because it's a person and it's a complete you're like being with a completely different set of circumstances. What do you think about that, Amy?
Yeah, well, it's not the same physical person. If you can have two of them, then
but they're never in the same space.
But still, it's like it's not the same one. Like, it's different. It's different. So yes, you are cheating.
All right. Well, there you go.
Done.
And Kari, your thoughts on this? I mean, I know
I would say no, not so much, but I probably am greatly affected by reading Time Traveler's Wife because he's there and he's his future self and past self, and he's totally cool with whatever versions with the woman he loves. So
different.
No, it's future self and present self. It's just hops around when that time is.
I think the other partner needs to know, like, hey, this is what's going on. Are you cool with it? Like, you let me know. Kind of what they did with Legion, consulting Sid.
And then she kind of was okay. But I also think you obviously are jealous because it's not with you now.
Yeah.
So I think on paper it's one of those like, yeah, like fine, but it probably would still bother you.
Case by case basis, I would say.
Yes, there you go.
We did have a few instances of female badassery, I think is a real term in this
Yes.
episode. One, Lenny with the big gun, which I was glad
Pulled
to
out of
finally
the
see.
case.
Sounds
Yeah,
like a great
ta-
band name.
Lenny with the big gun, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And also Kari, not Kari Lane, but Kari just taking out monks. And I don't know, I thought that was fantastic because it was like the high-pitched squeal knocked out everybody. But she's like, oh, I'm good. She had a little nosebleed, and she's like, whatever. What were you going to say?
I was scrolling through my Instagram feed. One of my friends was one of those dead bodies.
Oh,
Oh,
yay!
that's what that tweet
He
okay.
posted. I
saw a
just
post from you,
randomly
yeah.
sent it to them. So yeah, he has the barcode, and he got to pick his number. Like they're like, "What number do you want?" And I didn't get to ask more details about it, but he's like a basketball player. So he's like, "I want 34," and I'm like, "Cool." I'm like, "That's so random." I'm like, "What?" Because you're not expecting. I'm like, I knew exactly what that was because he just had a photo of his face
Yeah.
with like the green.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
So cool.
And so we get some of that. And
Cool
then
fighting. The
also-
Minotaur thing finally goes like, as Zia put it, is Super Saiyan.
Yeah, I'd still like a little bit more.
Oh, I want more info on that thing because I'm like,
yeah, you're gonna have to earn the Minotaur. I'm still gonna reserve judgment on
I do
that.
like that it's less like I am on crutches and like
Yeah.
wheels, and it's like big now because it's like, oh, okay, you've been released. Release the Kraken.
And the final thing we'll talk about the episode is this notion of this. I forget what they call the giant tuning fork.
Yes.
But I called it a tuning fork when I took my notes on it.
Clocked? No, something like that.
Yeah, well, I could find it, but see, it's all
forget.
right. It's not the point.
Yeah.
So they have the giant tuning fork, and then Farouk is just like, well, it's only going to work if you can use it, and he just kind of throws it really far away. But I expect that we will see that this Tuesday in the finale. I think that David or possibly someone else, more likely someone else, will bring it back, and then at a very inopportune moment for David, Farouk, both of them, it will render them both powerless. So I don't know. What do you think? You think we'll see it again, Kari?
I think so. Or like how you said, like it's such a big device. Like maybe you should have a more portable one.
Yes. You have like, well, this
Like
was it.
Like Ant-Man.
Yeah, like
Right. Yeah, Ant-Man's like he's like you'd have one
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let us know what you think. When Kari, when you get a chance, see what's going on in the chat.
Yeah,
See whom amongst our friends are there. We will now transition to the 2-episode premiere of Cloak and Dagger, which I know, Amy, you have been chomping at the bit to talk about because you watched 4 of them. I don't know, a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
So, remembering that you're only talking about the first 2 parts, give us your thoughts about the show and what your knowledge was going into it. I feel like just whatever we had talked about here on the show about Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah. Well, okay, so like I said previously, there was some hesitation watching it on Freeform. Because I don't think any of us 3 are the intended audience for Freeform.
Well,
Dead of Summer was so good, and that was freeform. But yeah, it's
at some point in your
yeah.
lives, the 2 of you are the people that they are going for, but I don't think that they were ever necessarily going for me. As much as I like
don't
shows
know.
Yeah.
about ballerinas who quit to, I don't know, join the
I wore
circus.
my
Does that sound
dance
like a show?
That's not...
shirt.
Wait,
for
that
this.
that
This
doesn't
is-
sound like a freeform show.
No, I said I wore my dance show shirt for this.
Oh, I
because
see.
For thing.
Yes.
But yes, you're absolutely right. That I actually meant to take a picture of this and post it on Instagram. The Freeform logo burned into the bottom of my screen. I'm like, this just looks so weird because it's never been on my screen before.
This is a first for you.
It was, yeah. And I'm like, I don't even think my wife watches shows on Freeform, so that'll tell
I only
you.
watched one. Like Dead of Summer is the only one I saw, but I really enjoyed that one.
Anyway, so
Yes.
so that was your reservations, Amy, and then when you
Yes.
actually saw it,
Well, when I actually saw it, I thought it was so freaking cool. I think that just even that we're going into full spoilers, right?
yeah, I guess it's good to say that because we're going into full spoilers for the first 2 episodes that aired on Thursday, which, granted, you've only had a few days to watch it, but we are going to talk about it.
Spoilers.
Honestly, this isn't. I feel like any of the spoilers we talk about in the first 2 parts are not really the big spoilers we might get
Exactly.
later in the series.
Yeah.
Well, maybe even in parts 3 and 4 you know some, but you're like, I don't know.
I don't know.
But anyway, so let's talk about anything that happened in the first 2 parts is fair game.
Okay. The beginning part, I think tying into what we're going to talk about later, the origins
Yes.
of Cloak and Dagger were done beautifully. I think the young Cloak and the young Dagger,
Oh, they are adorbs.
so
Yeah.
stinking cute.
So cute.
But even just the water
great.
scene, like with the car,
Yes.
isn't that fantastic? And then the little light. Ooh.
The whole thing looked cool, and I liked as the 2 episodes went along, we got to see more about what happened and then the aftermath. Because when she sees Tyrone, I think it's after the party. She's like, "You're there on the beach," and we're like, "Well, what beach?" Oh, okay. And then a little
Let's
later, we're
show
like, "There's
you."
the beach."
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and I read an article about that. There was a review about this where they said that the origin story shown in these 2 parts was great. That's where our topic came from, which we'll get to in a little bit. And I think they did a great job showing. It's certainly a variation from the comic book version of Cloak and Dagger, but a lot of times you have to do that.
Yeah.
And I think it was very cool to kind of see it. And yeah, I think they did a great job with the casting of the younger versions of them.
Wait, I'm sorry, did you say it's flipped from the...
It's completely different. It's
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah, they were like experimented on with a synthetic.
Oh, no, this
heroin.
was a
Yeah.
great, very modern take on it.
Yeah.
And I was curious. I feel it's one of those comics that I was aware of, but I never really read. But who they are as young teens, is that how it is in the comics too?
Well, the idea that they are thinking of things outside of the letter of the law, they definitely were introduced more as vigilantes, and then as time went on, they had to become a little bit more heroic to have their own book. But when they first show up in Spider-Man, yeah, they're absolutely, look, we have Tyrone going around, planning on killing someone in the course of these 2 parts. And that is not part of your standard, typical operating origin story. Yeah. So I think that the spirit of these 2 characters is still very much like that. I mean, the fact of how Tandy is basically, providing for herself is to, steal stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
And then she steals a lot of pills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hiding them at Mom's house, by the way, I just have to say, you had to have somewhere better to do it.
Yeah.
You're gonna hire a big bag full of pills at that Mom's house. So anyway,
Well, I was just curious too, of just showing it. It's nice to see. That's why I was curious how similar it is to the comics, because having a black male lead of like a rich family at a private school, and our white girl lead is essentially homeless.
yeah, no, their backstories are completely different, actually.
I think that's really
They're
interesting.
both
though, to
they're
make
both
that.
runaways in
yeah.
the comics, but yeah, I think that this is well, no, they're not.
Yeah.
they're not
Yeah,
on the
no,
runaways.
yeah.
No,
but
thank
Marvel.
you. Yeah, exactly.
Because it was refreshing to see that as a storytelling, and they felt their circumstances felt real, but it's just not normally shown on many television shows.
Right, absolutely. So anyway, what were some of the high points for you, Amy, as the course of these 2 hours unfolded?
I think just getting to learn more about Cloak and Dagger, Tyrone and Tandy, and because I wasn't familiar with them at all, like to get a little bit of their backstory, and also for it to, like, the writing is so good that you don't feel like you're being talked down to, but also like it's not dumbed down. Like it's very approachable, accessible, but it's easy.
The biggest thing that surprised me from a freeform show was the swearing. Because
yeah.
I'm like, this used to be ABC Family.
Yeah,
and I
Well,
guess
that's why they broke off.
yeah, because they're like,
we
we
adult.
got to get some a-holes in the script, and
Well,
and
her snorting drugs, having alcohol at parties.
gosh, seeing such a young, I mean, I know she's not that young, but she is young.
Well, they're playing like what, 16, 17?
yeah, well,
They're in high
school. I got the sense that
not
Tyrone
freshmen.
was a senior though.
Okay.
because
so-
he's
yeah,
I don't,
Going
yeah,
to state.
he's
right,
yeah,
right,
he's focused,
exactly.
yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So I think that they're probably, let's say they're like 17, 18ish, regardless of how they are. It's still, yeah, that was surprising that there was any degree of drug use, but they made sure that she smashed up a pill and snorted it, and right away, you always have to do that. When you have somebody coughing on a TV show, you have to be like, oh my God, I hate smoking. But
Exactly.
Oh, and all the ads on Hulu for anti-smoking.
oh, I didn't see that. See, because I watched the free.
If you watch on Hulu, it's all
it's
anti-smoking
all
ads.
anti-smoking.
That's nice.
But yeah, I think it was. It's you're definitely right. It's interesting that they showed those things and the fact that they were swearing as much. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely much darker and grittier than I expected.
Having a homeless teenager.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
I never expected that from Freeform, which is why I was apprehensive about this show and these characters, because you definitely have to live sort of somewhere in this relative space if you're going to tell Cloak and Dagger and tell the story, in a way that does justice to the original creation.
Also, the fact that it's in New Orleans, I think it adds to it. And in the coming episodes, you'll see a little bit more of that. But I love that you get a little bit of that.
Yeah, I
After-
mean, it's
yeah.
definitely one of those places that it doesn't look like anywhere else. So it's
Exactly.
smart that they're not pretending to be somewhere
Well,
else.
even the hurricane, like the disaster home that her mom is in, essentially, like that's very specific. Yeah, after having just gone there with, earlier in this year, I was like, oh my gosh, it totally feels that way. Random fun thing on filming, they're filming in Lafayette Cemetery because the other cemetery, I think it's St. Charles, Easy Rider filmed, and the church owns that. The Catholic Church owns it. Didn't like what they were doing, so they said no more filming ever here again.
So since like
Ever.
1968,
Yeah.
they haven't. Yeah,
So
and if you
anything
see that
post-
sequence in Easy Rider, you'd be like, oh yeah, well I wouldn't let somebody film here either. Yeah.
But the other cemetery is owned by Protestants because it was on the other side of the line of
The Protestant part of town.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was more the
Yeah.
Americans rather than the French living in the other line, and so that one is kind of cool to see that because I was like, I've been there. But yeah, what was great with them too, I felt they're very real kids. I do feel it's a little bit of a slow burn because I'm wanting more.
Yeah.
Because it's same thing. Problem with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Any show where there's going to be like powers and stuff. You're like, can we get to that? But I do like how they start using it. They pulls the blanket over or something and as the light, and so that was kind of a nice build up.
Yeah, I like how he doesn't know how his power works and he keeps trying to make it work.
I like
and
that
he
too.
can't make it work when he wants it to.
Yeah.
But it
Yes.
definitely works when he doesn't want it to. And I did like the little touches that made it feel a little bit more modern. If only I had been able to, text a girl from my class while I was in church.
Oh, that was weird though because that conversation
yeah.
kept jumping, and I'm like, that's not the send reply. You're like doing 5 other messages, and so I'm like, wait, I'm trying to read the
He's
other
got a lot
ones.
going on, He's,
I know,
but I
but
thought it was. I
still.
don't know. It felt like. See, I'm old, so I don't know, but I feel like they
You could have
definitely.
wrote paper notes, right?
Right. But I mean, I
Exactly.
feel like they took into consideration that this is still free
Yes.
form and they are trying to go for a younger audience. But if you are part of a younger audience and you are watching us right now, let us know if you felt like they actually did a good job of that. And let us know what you thought of the show in general. Kari is diligently manning the social media desk.
I'm trying to remember that moment. Do we see? Silver Watcher 30 says, was it okay for Tandy BF to be able to see Tandy naked? Is it a really
To show that much going on. Was that what?
yeah, we didn't see her. You saw her take her.
She
start to change.
changed. What she changed did the dry cleaners. Which, by the way, where's that dry cleaners? I mean, if I could just get anything just by
Yeah.
putting a little extra money in the pocket,
Yeah, I didn't think you saw it. And then also when she's at home and getting ready.
Yeah,
for
that's the one time where he would have seen her. But I mean, also he is her
Their
girlfriend.
boyfriend and
Yeah, it's
girlfriend.
her
like
boyfriend.
she was straddling him in the car.
Yeah,
Pretty much
so-
having
Stuff
sex.
was going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely some things going on.
Yeah, let's see. A lot of people definitely agree it does not feel like a freeform kind of show. Just definitely elevated kind of show. And then, Ivan, so Tandy almost being assaulted made me sad for Tandy. I think they handled that one well too, because that's also a very real situation that many ladies, unfortunately, might experience.
And it also would make sense
Yeah.
that her power would manifest in
Yes.
that
Oh,
moment
yeah.
because she's just like,
Yeah.
what can I do? And
Yep.
it's like, we have these little light knives, which
Yes.
is definitely part of her power from the comics.
Yep.
So it was actually kind of cool to see. And it's a great way to get rid of the murder weapon, I guess, if you have a light
Yes.
knife. But yeah, that's a great example of how just dark the show is, I mean, just how
Mm-hmm.
far along that sequence goes.
Though I thought she was dumb to go to the ballet. I'm like, those are assigned tickets that you paid for. That.
Yeah. Now she didn't sit in the seat, so she was like,
That's true,
she was
but
half
she'd still
smart.
go.
She looked at the seat and was like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go ahead and
How'd
be
she
up there.
get up there?
Exactly.
Well, that's to illustrate just how agile she is, which I think will be important when they start
They
doing
showed
some
her
superhero one.
walking across the plank.
And yet she was a
made, too.
terrible ballerina when she was little
Yes.
Tandy. Yeah.
Her powers hadn't started to develop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much like X-Men it's not quite puberty, but it's moments of like duress that it comes out. Though I was, the part when Tyrone's watching the bad guy essentially, it was weird because did he just fall asleep while he was waiting?
Well, the point was that he was waiting for a really long time.
Okay.
And also, I think this was good writing where they established earlier that he hadn't slept well the night before, so he was already tired. But yeah,
Other parts he just transports when he goes to sleep, and I'm like, that's dangerous.
Yeah, right.
That's like sleepwalking, teleporting.
As illustrated,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. It's just like, oh, I woke up. You wake
Never
up on,
sleep in your underwear again.
Right.
We would be wearing full outfits every time.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. Always sleep with cash in your pocket.
Yeah.
Because you might not
ID.
be able to get.
I like the evil corporation being our big bad kind of thing for now.
Well, because and Roxanne shows up throughout Marvel TV and movies, which it's sort of a nice carryover. So yeah, I think it's interesting the way that they're sort of positioning this story, and the fact that Roxanne's involved. I think will continue to be very interesting. What were some of your other standouts, Amy?
Well, I mean, going back to Tandy's little dagger.
Yeah, that is her. It is
Yeah,
her little
that's what it
dagger.
is.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful because I mean I
Yes.
really hadn't looked at anything prior to seeing it. So just to see her holding it, and it looked really nice, very realistic, but also super powerful. And the way it just lights everything up, it's so superhero-y without it being like, look, it's so cheesy, you know?
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to make look the way it should, and
Yeah.
I think that they did a good job with it. And I think, again, it helps because we had 2 episodes to watch on the premiere night, but we really get a lot of character development. We see Tyrone with his family. We see, what their concerns are, the aftermath of his brother being shot. But then we also really get to know Tandy and her boyfriend at this wedding that they go to. And we get to see sort of how they each have this power where they come into contact with someone and then they see sort of the lightness of their future. And then Cloak, the reverse of that, the inverse of that, which is with his mom and sees like her darkest fears and like lives inside of them.
So yeah, I was curious so when they're touching, what are they actually seeing?
I think that is sort of the manifestation of, so for Dagger, it was her boyfriend. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. William? Liam? All right. Well, there you go. Glad you paid attention. So that I think is either, I'm going to assume those are his hopes and dreams that they end up getting married like that. And then for Tyrone's mom, you're right.
Also, Tandy talked to your mom.
Right, exactly. So, but then also for Tyrone, it's that moment of, that's what his mom's nightmare is. Being, in this supermarket and then both of her kids getting shot and being left alone. So it's sort of an interesting thing, and it's very difficult to control these powers, obviously. And, when you're basically, stepping outside of your own headspace like that, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Yes.
Seb Russ in the chat says, I think Dagger sees a person's hopes, Cloak sees their fears.
Yes, exactly. I think that's a perfect way to summarize it. I think that's exactly the way that these work.
Okay.
And I do believe that when they have better control of their powers, they will be able to get you to see your fears. That's specifically what Cloak can do. And so you get wrapped up in the big cloak, and then he lets you out, and you're really messed up from what you saw. So, yeah. So I look forward to that. I look forward to him really having the cloak and using it, and we saw sort of some instances of getting shot inside of the cloak.
That was cool with the bullet,
the bullet
in the trash
that he had,
can.
yeah, which I didn't even know was in the premiere when I mentioned last week. It was one of the things that I liked the most about his powers, and it ends at a very interesting point, the second episode. So we have a lot to look forward to this week. But they end up back in the same place. He disappears right as he tries to shoot the red-haired, scar-faced police officer,
who's the nephew of the chief of police, essentially.
Yes,
which I like that reveal.
Yeah, I think it's good. I know. So I think that this is a great pilot. I know it's 2 episodes, but it's a great pilot episode for a TV series. But it's also a great superhero origin story. Would you agree, Kari?
I think the origin on this has come across very well, and the cutting back and forth between the two characters very frequently was really interesting. Though it's weird because with editing and other stuff, I kept waiting for them to intersect.
Yeah.
Or like it's that person like talking and then they get hit by a car or something. So I kept waiting for that to happen. But I still liked hearing. It wasn't dominated like, here, let's tell you about one, then we'll go back. It was more like volleyball back and forth.
And I liked seeing the two of them run into each other at that party.
Yeah.
Because this is just from like an acting performance standpoint. You right away you see like, oh, they have great chemistry together, and I look forward to seeing them interact more in the future. Now we are going to transition to our topic for this week because we talked about how this great origin story. So I wanted to take. We're each going to pick 3 origins that we find amongst our favorites. And the only admonition I had for Kari and Amy is that you have to pick at least one from Marvel TV, since this is Marvel TV Weekly, and I will use mine first, which is Luke Cage. I think that the episode where you see him back at Southgate Prison, if I get the name wrong, my apologies to the prison, but where he's at the prison, he's getting tested on, and then of course, and I wish we could have found a version of this photo that was easier to see, but one of the high points for comic book nerds like myself in season 1 of Luke Cage is seeing him. He steals the laundry and he's got the stuff on from when he's tested. Well, that is what Power Man looks like in the comics, which is the early 70s. And the fact that he looked like it. But just getting to see sort of how that happened, it ties a lot into my number 2 when we get to it. But I think that the seeing how it happens and how he reacts when he gets it, to me, that's what's always interesting. So getting powers can be interesting, but for a lot of, like especially in the X-Men, you're born with it. But it always will manifest itself at kind of the worst/best time possible. So I think that can always be a fun way to see it. Now, Amy, what was your number 3?
My TV one?
Yes, let's go with, we'll get the TV ones first, sure.
Jessica Jones.
All right, and explain how we saw that on the TV show, how we saw the explanation.
So it was in season 2, and it was a nice little break from all of the episodes that we had gotten during the season. We go back in time and we see her relationship with her then boyfriend and how she gets the jacket, which I really love because, we all know how iconic the jacket is.
Yeah.
And funny enough, all I need right now is a jacket because I'm wearing gray and my hair is black just like hers. So
you're basically Jessica right now.
Basically. I did not do that on purpose. Yes, I did. I really did.
I really did.
I really did. I just should have worn the jacket. But yeah, and I think it shows you that even her relationship with Trish was a little rocky at the time.
Yeah. It was a little cray-cray. I think it's fair to say. Their relationship is definitely cray-cray.
Okay. But yeah, and you can see just how much she's evolved. I like the juxtaposition of, origin Jessica to our Jessica.
It's like Dagger having Cloak's hoodie that was his brother's hoodie.
Yeah. Man, she loved that hoodie. And you know what? It looks like a good hoodie.
It looks so comfortable.
I bet that was the wrap gift for people who worked on the show, was like that hoodie with the show logo on there. Because again, back to my little insider knowledge, I'm lucky enough that I have the wrap gift from season 1 of Luke Cage, which is that sweatshirt that he wore with the yellow inside, but it also has the show logo, and I think it says "Always Forward" on the back.
Why don't you wear it?
I don't know, actually. It's a good question. Because you know what? It's not as comfortable as the Civil War one that I wear more often with Iron Man and Captain America. But anyway, that's a little inside baseball. Kari, what was your from Marvel TV?
I was thinking about it, and sorry, I'm like, why is there noise playing on this? I was thinking of like who somebody is actually interesting of when we learn more about where they came from, and I would say Daisy Johnson.
Quake. Yeah, I agree.
Sky.
Actually. No, we're just talking about Daisy.
Daisy.
Because Sky doesn't have powers, but Daisy does.
True.
Right. I thought it was really interesting when we first learned about who her mother and father are. Like, that was great backstory.
That was probably, I don't know that was the best season, but that was the most interesting season of S.H.I.E.L.D. Just really getting to know her parents and sort of her whole backstory. I think that it really... It was a big turning point for me because, as I've said before, didn't love Sky, but have always liked Daisy. And I think getting the differentiation, like this is Daisy, this is who Daisy is, I think that that really helped for me personally.
Yeah, and just like seeing who her mom was, and like that actress is so uniquely beautiful and just such really kind of cool.
Oh my god, I follow her on Instagram.
So, you're talking about Daisy, but her mother.
No, her mother. That actress.
Sorry.
Who I only remember seeing on that Joss Whedon show, Dollhouse. That's the only thing I remember. Her from.
She's also on Altered Carbon, and she's very naked on that show.
I'm listening.
Side note. No, it's one of those you go, okay. No, she's great in that as like a martial artist person as well, but nudity makes sense in Altered Carbon, sort of. But I thought it was great to see where she came from and, just genetically how she got her powers and everything like that. Like, her father's an average human, but he's kind of crazy mad scientist at the same time. And just how there's weird family issues with them.
Yeah, and I would say that getting to know Daisy's backstory and her actually, her inhuman powers manifesting themselves kind of changed that show from being like Coulson and everybody else to like Coulson and then Daisy and then it's definitely like tiered as the show went along. There's a lot of different levels.
Depth.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's move along to my number 2 choice, which the image that I'm using is actually from a terrible source. It is indeed our friend Logan going through the Weapon X process and becoming Wolverine. This image is from X-Men Origins Wolverine, which when Anthony in the booth, whom you can follow at TonyBTony_, he said, "Oh no, that's the worst movie ever." But what I will say about it is, one, you're not wrong, but what gets overlooked in this movie is how great Liev Schreiber is as Sabretooth. The movie is not good. The movie is garbage, but he's so good in it. And I was like, oh, I wish he could have been Sabretooth in a better movie. And that will never happen now, unfortunately. But I've always found, and look, there have been a lot of different backstories for Wolverine throughout the course of comics. I think for decades, the most interesting thing is that he didn't know that much about who he was, so you didn't know. And then when we get little bits and pieces of it, like you get to actually see the story of, him going through the process of the adamantium bonded to his skeleton. And also, just little snippets where it turns out, we find out after Magneto rips the adamantium out of him that he had claws all along. So he had the bone claws. So I don't know. It's one of the better characters that unfortunately is overused in the Marvel comic book universe, and some would say in the movies. But he's really only been in starred in only a handful of movies. He just had some cool cameos. But this, I thought, was, at least this part of the movie, it was a great representation of like a 10-part story in Marvel Comics Presents, which was the first time we really understood how this happened to him. And I don't know, I was a big fan of this part of the movie and of Liev Schreiber and of basically nothing else, especially not you, Taylor Kitsch. Yeah, I'm talking to you. You're no Gambit. Anyway, what was your number 2,
right?
Amy? Yeah, thank you, Anthony. Yeah.
One elbow takes him out. Come on.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Wimp.
And I'm not the biggest Gambit fan, but I was like, man, he is way cooler than that.
And he's a pilot? What?
Yeah.
Whatever.
What was your number 2, Amy?
My number 2 was Black Panther.
Yeah.
In Civil War.
Oh.
Because that's when we first get a little glimpse of him. That's his kind of like origin, I would say.
I mean, for a lot of audience, that's like, oh, who's this guy? Okay. Yeah.
So it was great because, I mean, obviously Black Panther has come out since then, and we've seen more of, you know, everything that they do in Wakanda. But that part where T'Challa basically...
T'Chaka was his father.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where he just takes over, and then you see that whole the scene where they're all just running away, and just he's in full Black Panther costume. You're like, what is this? I mean, having never seen anything like it, you're like, he is amazing. He's a freaking Black Panther. And for him to take on that role for his father and to take over Wakanda and everything, you know, for Wakanda, it was fantastic. And I think that really catapulted.
Yeah, that... Oh, and I almost talked over the clever wordplay. That's a great reveal in Civil War, and it almost overshadowed the fact that we were getting to see Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the first time. Almost. But also, like, people know Spider-Man, even though, like, we hadn't seen that iteration of him. So this was like, I don't know who this guy is, but man, that suit is cool. Kari, what was your number 2?
I'm gonna go with movie then too. I'm like, oh, we're going like
yeah.
Movies. So we'll do TV, movie, comic.
And, but as I say, my number 1 is a comic, but yours don't have to be.
Well, I shifted it now because I'm like, oh wait, you know, one I was thinking about somebody like learning who their parents are. Interesting. Peter Quill, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're wondering for so long, who is he? And then when we finally find out, you're like, oh, he's a horrible person.
My dad is Ego, the living planet.
Yes.
Oh, his name is Ego. I'm gonna bet he's
Nice
a real
picture,
D-hole.
So that was fun to get that origin because you get his mom like at the very beginning.
Yeah.
It's like so sad, and you get who he is. But when we learn that, and even like his connection to Landau, you're like, oh wait, no, what's it?
Yondu.
Yondu.
Yeah.
There we go.
Landau.
I know, right?
I don't know if you meant Lando Calrissian or Martin Landau from
There's
the original
so many-
Mission Impossible,
My
but either
brain's
way,
just like,
it's all
So
right.
many nerddom.
Yeah. Yondu. So like him and like their relationship, and then his birth father, and so I thought that was very
And
nice.
the realization
Rewarding.
of how he's able to hold an
Who he
Infinity
is,
Stone.
and yeah.
You know, we finally understand, like, yeah, well,
Yes.
why did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, and that was a point that was made on, I think, when I was on Anatomy of a Movie about Infinity War, is the reason why he's not able to hold the Infinity Stone in Infinity War is because his dad, the Living Planet, was dead.
Yes.
So he didn't have whatever that ability was anymore. Anyway, which is interesting. That's a good one. I think that, yeah, it's like, well, how does this kid who disappears like in the late 80s with a Walkman and a couple of tapes
All those
turn
gags
into
are funny too.
Yeah.
Come back.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. Well, for me, my number 1 is and had to be Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, becoming Spider-Man. And there are so many different versions of seeing this happen, but it's always bitten by a radioactive spider. And we were talking before the show, there are so many of the classic Marvel characters are Bruce Banner, belted by gamma rays. The Fantastic Four go into space, inundated with cosmic rays. So there was all of this radiation. But being bitten by a radioactive spider is just such a cool, like, random thing to happen. You know, the radioactive spider could have bit Flash Thompson. Imagine that. You know, I think that there actually is a what if comic book of what if the radioactive spider bit somebody else. But anyway, and I just think that, you know, look, we saw it in the first Tobey Maguire. We saw it in the first Andrew Garfield. We did not see Tom Holland bitten by a radioactive spider, but I suspect we will see it somehow, and like even if it's like a brief flashback. But for me, that is just the quintessential best origin that you can have in the Marvel Universe. It's hard to beat Spidey. Amy, who was your number 1?
Mine in comics, which I have a little brief history, of course, with comics, but Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan.
Yes.
This
We have
was
to
the newest.
differentiate not the Carol Danvers
Correct.
who will become Captain Marvel in the movies.
Correct. She was kind of like my first sort of introduction with comic books, and I did read like 1 issue just to get into it. And her origin story is awesome because she's super relatable. She's in high school. She's a fan of the Avengers.
Who's not? Yeah.
Relatable. And then she goes through Terrigenesis, and she's basically an Inhuman, and she's Ms. Marvel. And so she has this power. I don't remember what it's called, but things can enlarge. There's a word for it, but I can't remember. But so to see that evolution for her is cool, and to get, I mean, a little bit of an origin story for her is it's really cool because she is a young girl with these powers, and you can only imagine that it might be a little scary at times and kind of.
She's Muslim too, right?
Yes, she is.
So that
Which incorporates in the costume of like having a superhero, but like fully covered. They don't have to be naked.
No,
Exactly.
and actually, if you want to have a differentiation, believe me, Anthony, this will be a very brief diversion. Can you please Google image Ms. Marvel #1? This will be from the 70s, and we have used this image before, but I know it'll just be easier because you want to talk about not being covered up, you can talk about the original Carol Danvers Ms. Marvel. Now, to their credit, within probably about 6 months, they did cover up her stomach. But, what a way to use the sort of newly adopted identifier of Ms. MS period, which was supposed to be sort of a very empowering thing. And then also have, at this point, probably the skimpiest costume, save Tigra, who basically just wears a bikini. Anyway, thank you, Anthony, for finding that so quickly. I think that's a great choice, and I don't know that much about the Kamala Khan, or Kamala. I'm bad with the pronunciation. I don't know that much about her, so I look forward to finding out more, and also I believe that is going to be a movie at some point. And there she is for the new Ms. Marvel #1. The huge difference. And finally, Kari, your #1 origin story.
Well, it's interesting. Our love of Spider-Man spreads across the table. I'm going to say Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah, now what's the difference with Spider-Man 2099?
So it is futuristic.
Yes.
It's 2099. So it is Miguel O'Hara, which is also the first Latino character to assume the identity of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But not the only, because we also have Miles
Yeah, just
Morales.
first.
Yeah, just first. Though.
These came out when came out in 1992.
Yeah.
And so he's in New York, and he's attempting to recreate the abilities of the original Spider-Man in other people, and later suffers a related accident that causes half his DNA to be rewritten with Spider's genetic code. With this comic, I read it probably shortly after it came out, so it's been a while, but the thing about it that really stood out to me is him when he's discovering kind of what his powers are. Like there's this scene where he's on a rooftop, and I think the bad guys or something, they're trying to kill him, and or someone's falling, and he goes to grab the person, but instead of his fingers being like sticky, they're talons. Which, if he goes to touch himself, they retract. But he goes to grab this person's arm, but it's like daggers into this guy's arm and rips off, and he falls to his death. So that was like, what? Also, he fights somebody who has like a sword, and he reaches up and like grabs it and slices it. And also that's like how he's able to climb buildings. So that visually for me was violent and so kind of cool, and it had a familiar vibe but kind of futuristic.
Yeah.
Even though 2099 is not really that far from today.
No, but when they did it,
super futuristic then.
yeah, exactly. It's like there's a TV show in the 70s called Space 1999, which just sounds quaint now.
Yeah.
But right. Spider-Man 2099, and also there was an X-Men 2099.
Yeah,
and
it was,
our friend Michael Shirley, who has moved to Tennessee, was a huge fan, and still is a huge fan, of X-Men 2099. So let us know what some of your favorite origins are, and I'm going to let Kari troll and try and find, not even really troll because that's a negative thing, but I want you to try and find them. But before you do, I want to show something that somebody sent to us on Twitter, if you can find that, Anthony, that I sent an email earlier. We do indeed have, I believe, Christian Jacks, but it's spelled with a K, so that throws me off because it's not spelled the way that mine is. But we were talking last week about Marvel tattoos, and I am not cool enough, and I just don't have it in me to get something like this. But I wish
it's a nice spot,
I wish I was able to get this,
because
I love this Avengers tattoo for those watching on YouTube. And yeah, just the placement is perfect. And I said, what I tweeted back was that if only I could have gotten that, and then on the other side I would get the sort of the X-Men one that we were talking about, the Black X.
You still can.
Well, I still can, but I definitely won't.
If we get 1,000, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, if we get 1,000 retweets, I still won't do it. Anyway, so thank you so much.
get it live on the Bladtcast.
Yeah, that's right. We would do that on
You
the
could
broadcast.
do it as a Facebook Live.
That's true. Oh, I would definitely have to, put it on some form of social media. Anyway, so thanks so much, Christian, for sharing that with us. And he also sent us a tweet of some other tattoos that he had. So we always appreciate that. And you can continue to send us your Marvel tattoos. We will never get tired of looking at them. And anyway, Kari, so what are some of the origins people are throwing around in the chat?
Yes, somebody said, No Eyes Bunny says, my number one is Red She-Hulk. I want more of her.
Red She-Hulk, okay.
Then I think someone was saying like Silver Surfer, who was willing to give up his life to save his planet.
And to basically be enslaved to Galactus, although he eventually breaks free of him, but that is the deal that he made, was to spend the rest of his life as the Herald to Galactus. And Norrin Rad, the real name of the Silver Surfer. So maybe one day we'll get a good version of him in a movie.
Zayas Bilou says, love Kane Parker's origin and Blue Marvels. I'm not familiar with those titles.
I can pretend, but I literally have no idea what that is. So
let's see. People are talking about Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah.
Daredevil.
Well, you can continue.
Daredevil's origin.
Daredevil's is pretty good. The comic book version, he basically gets hit by a truck of toxic waste.
Yeah.
That's basically what happens. It's a slight
Turtles.
It's not that different than the Ninja Turtles. That's right.
He's basically a Ninja
Random
Turtle.
side thing that I want origin info, and then it was kind of mentioned. The detective in Cloak and Dagger, I was not a fan of how much, when she's first introduced, this woman can't speak.
Oh, okay.
It's weird. It is super weird watching this. I'm like, why does this woman not have a voice? Also, she's really pretty to be a detective. I'm like, I don't really believe you were a beat cop for like years. And
Kari, have you ever watched a police show on television? There are
Not
there are
much.
males and females that you're like, they would never be, at least she's a detective, she's not a beat cop. Anyway, we will find out more about that detective, I'm assuming. Don't say anything, Amy. In the next episode of Cloak and Dagger. And then this week we also have the season finale of Legion. So we'll talk about that next week. Will the singing mouse make a return? We'll find out.
Probably not.
It's about time.
Probably
Let's
not.
do it.
But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Cloak and Dagger, and we'll see you all back here Sunday at 10. You can find me at ChristianDMZ, and that's on Twitter and Instagram. Amy, where do people find you?
You guys can find me on all social media at Amy Cassandra MTZ.
And Kari?
yeah, you guys can find me online at Kari D. Lane. That's KARIDLANE.
And the video version is being put together, but on my personal podcast, The Bladtcast, is my oft-referenced sit-down with Chris Claremont from a couple weeks ago. So you can find that at bladtcast.com, BLADTCAST. It is an hour and 8 minutes, chock full of fascinating observations. But you'll get more fascinating observations from us next Sunday at 10. Until then, Excelsior!
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later!
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.